Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Lexington's Community Forum, voting in the 2022 primary election. I am Mary Hughes, co-president of the League, and I am here tonight with my co-president, Jennifer Jackson. You may be aware that there has been some recent legislation that has been signed into law that changed when people are allowed to vote. We are excited that Mr. Don Blevins Jr., Fayette County Clerk, is here with us this evening to break down what we need to know to vote, and so we can let others know how to cast a ballot in the primary election in May. Don Blevins Jr. is a native Lexingtonian raised on the West End in Gardenside. He attended James Lane Allen, Beaumont, and graduated from Lafayette High School in 1980. Don holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Kentucky and a master's degree in electrical engineering from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. His early career was in integrated circuit research and development for AT&T Bell Laboratories and the Microelectronics Center of North Carolina. After returning to Kentucky, Don's career continued in software development with various small firms and later with IBM. Don continued in software and systems development with a management position at Perot Systems. In 2007, Don's political career began when he was elected 10th District Council member for the Lexington Fayette Urban County government. In 2009, he was appointed to fill out the term of the retiring Fayette County Clerk, his father, Don Blevins Jr. Senior, sorry, Don. And now our speaker, Mr. John Blevins Jr. Don.
Hello, friends. It's good to see you guys or be with you guys again. You all are one of my favorite groups to talk to because you all ask some of the best questions, and you also support me as a great partner in terms of getting out the information that voters need to hear and know. So thank you for that. Jen, if you would, I'm on my iPad, so I can't see the chat easily without compromising the video. So if you would monitor the chat and just pipe in occasionally with questions, that would be great.
Sure.
So I want to begin by just giving you all a lay of the land since 2020. In 2021, the legislature passed House Bill 574, which dramatically changed elections in Kentucky quite a bit. So for example, the biggest change was the addition of early voting, which we only have had in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. Now, one thing I want to point out right from the beginning is that in 2020 in the general election, the early voting that we had was 3 weeks long, as compared to what the new law says from 2021, which is that we only have 3 days of early voting. So let's get that one out of the way right away and point out that the rest of the nation, we are the shortest early voting in the entire nation at 3 days. The next closest, I believe, is Oklahoma at 5 days. And after that, it's anywhere from 10 to 40 days of early voting. Why is this important? Well, the problem is if you compress the voting down to just a few days, over time, it's shown in other states that this becomes a very popular way to vote. And if you try to get thousands and thousands of people through venues over 3 days, it means that you have to have either a lot of venues or several very large venues. Well, those of you you're familiar with Fayette County, you know what I know, and that is we don't have anything like that. We have the Civic Center, which I've been told is booked until 2025. We'll talk about that again in a minute. The football field, which is not available except in the spring, we can't use it in the fall. So that's not really a consistent use kind of facility. And after that, it's the school system. And I'm sure you all have seen how I almost got ran out of town with pitchforks and torches when I suggested we might use them for this upcoming primary. That will be a recurring theme until either the legislature solves this by expanding the amount of time, or we come up with some other way to solve this, and there's just not good options. Fortunately for the primary this year, UK has come through for me once again, and we're going to use Kroger Field. So that was one of the biggest changes created by House Bill 574 in 2021. There were some other good changes, actually some good things in that bill that helped county clerks. For example, we are now officially able to use consolidate precinct election officers and machines where they're co-located in one location. So for example, under the old rules, if we had three precincts and one school gym, we would have to have a set of machines for each precinct, a set of election officers for each precinct, and it would be as if they're all distinct little entities that just happen to cohabit the same space. Under the new rules, I can consolidate that and use one machine, in our case, a scanner, and also consolidate the election officers to make it feel more like a vote center, although what vote centers have is a very specific meaning, so you have to be careful. But it just feels like you can come in, check in with your particular precinct's check-in station, get your ballot, go vote, and then leave. But from a county clerk's perspective, it's much better because we're using fewer machines and fewer people. So those are the two big changes that I can remember off the top of my head from House Bill 574 last year. Prior to that, you may recall that they passed some fairly restrictive voter ID requirements. Those are still in place. Those passed in 2020. Generally speaking, if you have a government issued ID with your name and photograph on it, it will suffice. That can be state, federal, or local, as well as a public or private college or university. So generally speaking, if you have an ID from any of those sources, you're good to go. Of course, this is considered regressive by some because folks that are older that don't drive anymore won't necessarily have an ID like that. Unfortunately, at the same time, Kentucky changed the way we're doing driver's licenses to make it more regionalized. That had the unintended consequence of making it even more difficult to get an ID if you don't have transportation or you're elderly or infirm. It was not well thought out. However, it was politically savvy, or however you want to look at it. It's our Republican-controlled legislature. They got what they wanted. So we're going to have to live within those rules as well. So those are the big changes from 20 and 21. This year, they did county clerks the favor of passing a last-minute bill yet again. This time it's House Bill 564. And primarily the couple of changes they made, one is seemingly innocuous, the other one is pretty big. So the big one is that they reinstated in-person excused absentee voting. That's because it kind of got dropped between the cracks when they added early voting. They deleted that in the original House Bill 574 last year. So they needed to reinstate that. And as a result, we'll have 6 days of in-person absentee excused voting. In addition to recreating the excused absentee in-person voting, they actually expanded the reasons that you can vote. And let me just give you an idea of what some of those are. I got to look over here at the screen, so I apologize. So the normal one that we're all used to from back in the day, 2020 and before, 2019 and before, is that if you're out of the county on election day, you can vote in-person absentee. That's what all the snowbirds would use in the fall, for example, and it's one we're all used to. Well, that continues to be true. But in addition, they've added surgery, or if your spouse is having surgery and you or your spouse are in the hospital over the period of early voting and election day, temporarily living out of state for work or something, and you're going to be out of the county on election day and early voting. If you're military confined to base during those times, if you're in your last trimester of pregnancy, you can sign an affidavit and vote in person, absentee, or you can still vote early voting or on election day as well. And then some more age, disability, or illness. This was changed in, I believe, 2018, which basically said, if you can vote absentee by mail, you're also eligible to vote absentee in person. Students continue to be eligible to vote in person if they're going to be out of the county on both of those voting options. And then finally, election officers. And then there's a new interesting one that targets a long-held belief by some that there are people who have employers that don't let them vote on election day. And what this one says is if your occupation has you scheduled to work during the hours of early voting and on election day, then you qualify to vote excused in-person absentee. So those are all the big changes over the last couple of years. There's some other small things too that we'll just skim over those for tonight for the purposes of being brief. The small thing that happened this year that seems innocuous but is not, is going to be of interest to you guys because I know you all like the technical details. The small thing is that during early voting, they're requiring that I use precinct-specific ballots as opposed to absentee ballots. What that means is we have to use every possible ballot combination that could come about times the number of precincts. So for example, for this spring, had they done this in a timely fashion, I would have had to have something in the neighborhood of, I think it's 858 different ballots laid out on tables out at Kroger Field. Why is that? Well, it's because we have a ballot for a Republican, a ballot for a Democrat, and a ballot for an independent voter. You multiply that times our 286 possible precincts to get the precinct-specific data, and you come up with 858 possible ballot faces. So imagine the logistical challenge of having all those spread out on tables. It's a nightmare for the largest counties. We told them this back in 2020 multiple times. We've told them since multiple times. I've tried to get them not to do this, and the legislature's just addicted to precinct level data, and that's all there is to it. So fortunately for me, they didn't pass it quickly, and the governor sat on it for about a week. And so once they passed it with the emergency clause this spring, it was past the deadline for when I have to print ballots. So I had already printed absentee ballots for Fayette County, and we're not going to go back and undo that. We'll just go ahead and use absentee ballots for the primary. That means I only have something like 28 ballot faces to lay out on tables at Kroger Field. However, in November, I'm going to have to deal with this problem in some way. It's just frankly silly. So that's the legislative landscape. Now let's zoom in and see how that applies to what we're about to do. So as you all know, Election Day is May the 17th. We're going to have our normal 100 plus locations. In this case, it's going to be 133 different locations. Most will have multiple precincts in them. We will be, for the first time, fully using our new voting machines that use paper ballots. So many parts of the county or people in the county have not gotten to use those yet because we all voted by mail back in 2020, or at least those of us who enjoyed the idea of voting from the kitchen table. I know I sure did, and I bet all of you did too. So those folks, though, haven't seen our new machines, nor have they voted on paper in that way. So most of our voting public is going to be trying out that for the first time. Secondly, we're going to be using what are called electronic poll books for the first time in a countywide election. What are those? If you recall, you used to come in, you meet with the clerk at your counter in precinct, and you sign the roster book. Well, now that's automated with these cool little iPads. And what we do is we scan preferably your driver's license because it has the barcode. We'll scan you in, hand you your ballot, you sign the little iPad, and off you go to vote. And then you yourself scan your ballot into the scanner, and you're done. It's much, much faster. People can vote, multiple people can vote, whereas in the old days, we were limited by the number of e-slate machines we had. Now, we just set up a bunch of booths for people to vote, and we can vote multiple people at once. So it should be incredibly much faster for everyone as you vote, particularly on election day, if there's crowds. Now, unfortunately, we know that this particular election cycle in the primary is a very low turnout, traditionally something like 27%. So we probably won't get to see the juicy speed we just bought, but you all will know, at least in your hearts, that this is the way it's going to work in the future. And then on a presidential, it'll have a real impact. So traditional election days, option number one. Option number two is what we spoke about earlier. There will be 3 days of early voting on the 12th, 13th, and 14th. This is available to all voters. You'll go to Kroger Field. We're going to be on the same side of the stadium we were for the primary in 2020. That's the backside near Alumni Drive on the blue lot. There will be signage to direct people in. Voting will occur from 8:30 to 4:30 on all 3 of those days. You will queue up underneath the stadium, so if it's raining, unless it's really crowded, we should be able to keep everybody out of the rain. It'll just depend on how many people want to use that option. The next option we spoke about earlier is in-person excused absentee for all the reasons I listed to you. You'll have to show up to the county clerk's office. We're going to do that at my office. With your ID, we'll have you fill out an application and explain why you qualify and sign the affidavit. We'll take you down the hall, give you a ballot, and you vote. I'm hoping that would be the traditionally low volume that it always is. There's some worry among my staff and myself that people will cheat and lie and try to use that just so they can avoid the other election times, but hopefully that will be a minimum. The final way to vote is by mail. And again, we're back to the old restrictions of age, disability, or illness. That is available now. You can go to govoteky.gov and you click on the request a ballot, and then off you go. And we will mail you a ballot. You complete the ballot package just like you've done in the past, and then they mail it back to us, or you can use the Dropbox located in front of the office down on 162 East Main Street. So that's the broad overview. I'm going to pause, Jen, and let's see if some people have some questions and see what happens.
Yeah, so we have one question in the chat, and let's see, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. So Sarah was asking if Mr. Blevins' office has all of this information online in bullet points.
Not yet. We're going to get that up very soon. I've got a press release went out yesterday, and I made a Reddit post today. We'll put it on our website probably Monday.
Excellent. And I had a question actually. So with the electronic poll book and you're signing in, I would assume you're using your finger to sign. If you're looking at signature matching, I know that when I sign those things with my finger, it doesn't match at all what my signature looks like when I'm signing with a pen. Is there going to be issues with discrepancies there, or how will that be handled?
No. So keep in mind that what this would be for is when you're voting either in-person absentee, early voting, or election day, instead of signing a paper roster book, you're going to sign these little e-poll books. And you're quite right. Your signature is going to look like trash. Mine does too. So, but that doesn't matter, because all we're doing is acknowledging that you voted that day. You are acknowledging that you voted, and there's a record that you did vote. For the signature matching that you're talking about, that only applies to mail-in absentee ballots. That's where the signature really counts. I was worried, I will tell you, back in 2020, that the signatures captured by, say, driver's license, when you renew, it's an electronic pad and can look really kind of wonky. I was also worried that signatures captured on the portal, the govoteky.gov portal, would be kind of yucky. But we have, at least in Fayette County, most of the rest of the state doesn't have as good as we have it, but we have both your driver's license signature, if it exists, and we have your voter registration cards scanned back to the 70s. So I can look at a number of sources to figure out whether your mail-in absentee ballot is really you. And I was worried that we're going to have a lot of mismatches back in 2020, but I was very wrong. It turned out to be only a handful. So evidently our signatures that we have on file are fairly robust and accurate.
Don, there's a question for those wishing to vote absentee who do not have a computer. How do they obtain an absentee ballot?
Oh, great question. You call the office, explain your situation, and we will do it for you. You can just call us anytime.
Okay. And is there a deadline for asking for a mail-in ballot?
Yes. Okay. That's a good question. We need to talk dates. So the deadline for requesting a mail-in absentee ballot is May the 3rd at midnight, or 11:59 technically. That's the first big deadline. The voter registration deadline is already passed. That was this past Monday, April the 18th. So if you're not registered, you missed your shot. Don't let that stop you, however. Go on the portal and go ahead, same portal, and register to vote, and we'll get you for next time. The other dates are in-person early voting begins the day after the portal closed. That's the 4th through the 6th. And then I believe it's the 9th through the 11th, the Monday through the Wednesday the next week. And then in-person absentee stops, and we switch over to early voting, which is the Thursday, Friday, Saturday of the 12th, 13th, and 14th. And then finally, of course, election day is the 17th. Your mail-in absentee ballot must be in my hands by 6 p.m. on election day, either via the Dropbox or the mail. Postmarks will not count this time. You have to get it physically to us by 6 p.m. on election day. I think that covers most of the dates.
Okay. There was a question. We know someone who tried to request an absentee ballot and got a message that she had already requested one. So we checked on the state BOE site and they said she had not requested one. What should she do?
Those are the same entity. The portal and the state BOE site are the same thing. So I'm not sure what happened there. She should call my office and explain the situation and let us look her up and see what's going on.
Right, good. Let's see. Will voters be notified if you determine a mismatch in the signature for absentee ballots?
Yes, we are required to contact you if we have a mismatched signature. Again, though, I got to tell you, the rate of mismatches is extremely low, surprisingly low. I was shocked in 2020, so I'm not particularly worried about that, nor should voters be. We had a special election last fall. I think we had 2.
So, and I don't know, I was kind of typing some stuff here, but there was also the question about the age to be eligible for mail-in ballots. I'm assuming that means the qualification for age, disability, and whatever.
It is notoriously vague. So I guess I would answer it this way. If you feel that due to your age, it would be a challenge for you to go to the polls physically, then I would say you qualify. That's the meaning. Age, disability, or illness, all 3. If you're unable to physically go to the polls and be comfortable and possibly stand in line for, say, 10 minutes, yeah, go ahead and order the ballot. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're able-bodied, however, and we catch you, I will prosecute you. I saw another one float by. What was that one?
Yeah. So how much publicity does your office do to let people know about primary election voting?
So I try to do a press release like I did yesterday. I'm sort of surprised that Herald didn't have something today. They'll probably have something over the weekend maybe. But I do the normal things like that. I'm on Reddit. We'll put it on our website. But in addition, I'm required by law to put a giant advertisement in the paper about a week before the election and before early voting. We'll probably do it a little earlier this year just so that we can catch people and get them ready for early voting. Let's see, in addition to all that, this particular cycle, because we just redistricted and there's a lot of precinct changes and some location changes, your location may have changed. We're going to send out a postcard to every household, not every voter, but every household saying, hey, your location is X, your precincts is Y. Here's how you can see your sample ballot, that kind of thing. So those are the major ways I'll do. After that, at some point, it's incumbent on the voter to kind of pay attention. We all know that in May, we're going to vote at some point, except for the off year. And then in November, we're going to vote again. So, you know, I have to rely on the voter to put out a little bit of effort.
I was going to ask also, you know, since there are so many changes in precincts, where do you recommend that people go to check where their precinct is so they can learn about like who their candidates are? Because they may not be the same people that they're used to running in their, you know, they may not be in the same district that they've always been in for the last 10 years.
Right. As always, on my website at FayetteCountyClerk.com, under the elections menu is a view your, I think it says view your sample ballot and check your information or something like that. If you will click on that link, you enter your social security number and your birth date. It will pull up your voting location, your precinct. It gives you the opportunity to view your sample ballot even before you vote at all. You can go look and see what all your options are going to be so you can do your own research. And then it also lists your let's see, state senate, state house, council district, that sort of thing, to let you know who all your representatives are currently. So all that information is available to you right now.
And what about people who are independent voters? Will they be able to vote in this primary?
Great question. Yes, we were shocked. How do I say this? I don't ever remember a primary where we didn't have something for independent voters to vote on. And of course, that occurred for the first time that I remember in 2020. And so a lot of voters showed up at Kroger Field that day wanting to vote, but they were independents with literally nothing on the ballot for them to vote for. And that was one of the reasons the lines got held up, because people were frustrated and wanted to argue with us about why they could or couldn't vote. This time, however, there are some nonpartisan races like city council. A great example is council at large. There's a bunch of candidates there. The mayor's race needs to get whittled down. So all of those are available to independent voters this round.
There's
Oh,
another question. Oh, so go ahead, Mary.
I'm sorry, Don. And Jen, can the Dropbox at the county clerk's office be moved closer to the street so that people will not have to find parking in order to use it?
No, I'm sorry. And the reason is we have to keep it under camera coverage. There's a security camera at the police department that covers it right now. And I don't want to make it too accessible to monkey business. So we're going to have to leave it there. You can pull up in that curb indentation, hop out, throw your ballot in, jump back in and go. So you don't have to park if you don't want to. And if you do this on the weekend, particularly, it'd be a lot easier.
Sounds good. Are there other questions?
So Jen, how long do you all want to go? Because there's some other things we could talk about that might generate some questions, but I don't want to get into it if you want to just do like 30 minutes or something.
Oh, no, we have till 8. So
why don't we talk a little bit about what keeps me up at night? So a quick little, soapbox about that. I constantly get questions when I go on radio shows and stuff like that from folks who have swallowed the disinformation that's out there that our elections are rigged and all that sort of thing. I think this audience knows that that's not true, but I want to arm you with some things that might help you as you're out there. You probably are never going to convince some of these folks and change their minds. But what you can do is give them cognitive dissonance and make them at least work it out in their brains. So let's talk a little bit about that. The first thing is our machines are never connected to the internet. In fact, House Bill 564 that passed this spring now makes that illegal, completely unnecessary because it wasn't happening in the first place. I will never do that. I would never do that. That's just dumb. And it's not necessary anyway. Our machines are locked up in a warehouse with burglar alarms and all sorts of motion detectors and video and all this other stuff. They're not going to be messed with ever. And if they are, we'll find out, we'll catch them and prosecute them. It's just not going to happen. In addition, to pull off anything large enough to throw an election requires the collusion of so many people. It just can't physically happen. It will require so many people to keep their mouth shut, be complicit to a crime that's a felony, and be willing to go to jail for it. Realistically, that's not going to happen. Even if I wanted to throw an election, I would have to compromise so many people, I would get caught. It just can't happen. So I don't know how we explain that to the public. There's so many safeguards and double checks. My staff, we were just going over some of the things we have to do today. For example, next week, we're going to conduct what's called an accuracy test. We've prepared a special deck of fake votes to run through a few machines that are specially configured to make sure, it's mostly to make sure that our ballots are configured correctly, but it also makes sure that the machines are counting correctly. This happens every election that we do. There are so many duplications and safeguards and double checking. I can't tell you how assured I am of our elections. But what keeps me up at night is all the disinformation that's out there. I'm not worried about the elections getting hacked or anything like that. The thing that worries me most is that, frankly, the Russians or the Chinese are able to disinform us enough to make people lose confidence in our elections and do things like what happened on January 6th last year. That's what's more of a threat to us for our elections on our democracy than anybody else, anybody cheating. The only cheating that's going on are Americans themselves, and a lot of them are getting caught. I think it's hilarious that it's typically Republicans, it seems like, but I'm sure it's not always that. It's mostly Americans that try to cheat and vote in two places. It's not anybody else or anything like that. So I just wish that you all can help. I'll do it. I will preach from the mountaintops myself, but you need to know, I can say that these voting machines are protected. As you heard in my introduction, I'm a master's degree in electrical engineering. I know how these things work from the electrons all the way up through the software. They're not hackable. That's not how it works. It cannot physically be done. So they're safe, I promise you. I just don't know how to get that out to the public and convince some of these folks. Let me pause and see what that, I bet that generated a few.
There are several questions. They're not necessarily about that.
Okay, let's go for it. I love the free-flowing conversation is great. Let's do it.
But it says, regarding the postcard that you send would be sent out, can it be sent in another color to help it stand out, perhaps yellow with black type? So many mailers are now downsizing, and it's always a white card stock. I accidentally throw away pieces of mail, which I shouldn't have.
Oh gosh, well, I'll take that under advisement. I think we're probably too late for this round because we're having to get with our vendors to print them, but I'll think about it.
Okay, good.
And please be careful for the next month while you open your mail. How about that?
Sounds good. It says, what times will the Dropbox be available?
Oh, it's 24/7. We pick up during the business day, but it's available 24/7.
Yeah. And this was a comment, but you might want to comment on it also. And it says, those fake votes that you were talking about, they are, of course, shredded. Correct?
Say that again.
Somebody said the fake votes, you said the ones that you use to test the machines.
Actually, no, we have to retain those for 22 months. The retention schedule for all election things are 22 months. They're just held out separately. We have to make sure the machines are programmed correctly. And the way to do that is to set up kind of a fake election, a little teeny fake election. It's about 100 ballots total. And we use machines that are not used during the election. They're set aside. Everything's kept, kind of cordoned off, if you want to think of it that way. So don't sweat that. Those votes aren't going anywhere.
Right. And it says, what about vote buying? One of the things that used to happen in Kentucky. Is that a problem?
It still does. I think in Fayette County, I'm not aware of anything like that right now. I know that it was still occurring as late as the 1970s, maybe even a little longer. I'm not aware of it in Fayette. I do think it's still happening in some of the rural counties. In some of the counties, it's my understanding that it's almost a cultural expectation. Folks will want to know how much they're going to get this year and who do I see to get my money. I know anecdotally a few years ago, there's a young lady that moved here from some rural county, Kentucky, and literally asked where she needed to go to sell her vote. So it's still out there in some counties. I'm just not sure how prevalent it is across the state, but I don't think there's any of it here. If there is, I think I would know about it.
Right. It says, are the postcards going to every household or only to ones who have switched precinct/voting location?
No, they're going to go to every household with a registered voter. So all of them. We're going to do them all this time just to be safe. We haven't voted really as a county in the normal way since 2019. So it's important that we get those. I think we just tell everybody this time. That's what we decided to do.
Right.
So wait, I want to go back to this. If the person came to the county clerk's office and asked you where they could sell their vote.
They didn't know. It just got back to us that had happened.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was like, does that mean in rural counties people are going to their county clerk and like that's the place to go? Oh, so
I don't think so. I think
something that you heard about. Okay.
I think in those pockets where this is occurring, it's well known who that person is. And you call up Howie or whatever and say, hey, Where do I need to be? That's just speculation on my part.
It's not funny, actually. Okay, any other questions, or should Don go on with some other related information? Don, do you have more that you want to tell us?
Let's see. Well, it might be fun to give you a day in the life of a county clerk. Last Friday before 11 o'clock, I found out that, they changed the valuation of our cars so that everybody wouldn't get such a spike in your property taxes. Well, the revenue cabinet tried to do that automatically, and the revenue cabinet, as we speak, is sending out checks to everybody that had already paid their vehicle taxes this year for the difference between the valuation from last year to this year, that according to the governor's order. But they couldn't do them all automatically. So I found out that I have to do 10,000 of them by hand here in Fayette County to remedy that. Let's see, what's another good one? My elections manager is out with surgery right now, which if you want to know what would freak out a county clerk, it's your key employee that runs your elections for the last 20 years suddenly has to have surgery and isn't available for this election. So yeah, I'm dealing with that. Bourbon is welcome, thank you. Contributions are needed. Let's see. It's just, I wish people could know the level of complexity and how much work goes into putting these elections on. It's just incredible. I'm so proud of my staff, let's just say it that way, but it's a lot of work. So when we have someone as key as my manager being out on leave, it's a big hit. And here's a great example of why that early voting problem is such a challenge. So we're going to do early voting at Kroger Field. So on the first morning, I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to send a couple of my smart election people out there to physically be with those election officers to get them set up, get them going, make sure everything's okay. Probably stay for an hour or so and just kind of see how it's going, see what kind of voter issues we're having, whether we need to react to this in any way. And then at the end of the afternoon, they're going to come back and help them shut down the machines temporarily, and then rinse and repeat for all 3 days. Well, we can't do that on election day. We have to hope that those officers know what they're doing, because there's 133 different locations. But for early voting, we have the ability to do that. It's a little bit different and more challenging for those officers. So it's nice basically to hold their hands. Well, this fall, if I'm unable to use the stadium and I'm unable to use Central Bank Center, then I'm going to have to use something like 8 to 10 schools. And I will tell you right now, it will be inadequate as we get into election cycles that have higher turnout. Eventually, we're going to have long lines and frustrated people, all because it's condensed down to those 3 days. And you're like, well, Don, just use more schools. Well, I will get run out of town if I close those schools for 3 days. I may have to. And if I have to, I will, but it's not my first choice. But I can't do more than 10 because I don't have the staff for that. How can we administer 3 days of 10 or more location voting and then switch over and have to do a full-on election day with 133 locations? As a friend of mine used to say, that dog won't hunt. So they really need to fix this early voting. It's not amenable to Fayette County. And by the way, Jefferson and Kenton counties have the exact same challenges I do, just in their locales with their particular buildings that are available and not available. This is not, it's just untenable to try and pull this off. So that's the kinds of limitations. It's not just resource limits like money, it's resource limits like people with the expertise to actually administer elections. They don't just pop out of the woodwork. It takes a solid year for one of my new employees to go through 2 election cycles before they're really a valuable employee to me in the elections department. I could go ahead and hire a bunch, but that feels dumb because as soon as I do, we're going to have an off election year. And now I've got, 20 people sitting around for a year. They just need to rethink that at the legislature. I think I saw a question. What we got?
Yeah, Cindy Heine said, do you have the resources, money needed to carry out the elections?
The answer to that is yes. Hi, Cindy. Long time no see. We are blessed in Fayette County that my office is pretty well funded itself, but also technically the fiscal court pays for elections, which in our case obviously is LWCG. So I have the money I need. It's just really the expertise limits and resources to do a ton of locations for early voting while we're doing all the preparations for election day. So for example, the week that we're doing early voting, we're also shipping the machines out all week long. It takes a week plus the following Monday to get all the machines, the tables, the voting booths, our little, what we call our gray boxes with supplies. All that stuff has to get shipped by one of our local movers. And it takes a week plus a day to do. So that's going on. We're stuffing what we call our black bags. If any of you are election officers, you'll know what I'm talking about. These are supplies that are specific to a precinct that we don't want to put out there until election day. So we give those to the clerks over the weekend. We'll be giving out our e-poll books over that weekend on Saturday and Sunday. This is all coincident with early voting on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So it's like hair on fire weekend for the county clerk and their staff.
Right. Don, that reminded me, I think in the past you talked about precinct workers. Are you in need of people this year? Or is that...
We're okay for the primary. However, I don't want that to stop. If you're interested in being an election officer, you can contact us anytime. Just contact the elections department. You're going to be need to be prepared to tell them your name, your address, and a good daytime phone contact. And we'll put you on the list for future elections. We are constantly recruiting. This spring it's been kind of difficult. I'm going to be honest. I was shocked. We're actually using less officers because of that consolidation that I was talking about. But we started to struggle. We have enough now, but it took a while. We got through our normal list and then had to start cold calling, and that is painful. It takes a long time to yield very few officers. I think people are going back to work for one thing, but also I think people are reluctant to serve because of the acrimony that's in politics right now. Why would you want to go to the polls and listen to somebody come in and holler at you about their candidate and blah, 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 this election's rigged or whatever.
Right.
I don't blame people that don't want to put themselves through that.
Great. If you were able to design, this is from Jen, the ideal voting situation for an election, what would it look like?
Oh, that's easy. Vote by mail. I would back that in a heartbeat. And there's good reasons, lots of good reasons. I think it's the most secure top style of election because your ballot comes to your mailbox. It makes it hard for bad actors they'd have to go to multiple mailboxes and try to steal them. And even then with the signature checking, it's going to be very difficult to do anything at all with those ballots. So not only is it convenient, it's more secure, and I would argue it's more efficient. And the reason is the states that do this use centralized ballot processing where they use machinery to do a lot of the work instead of human hands. It's just the most efficient, most secure way to do it. And I wish people would wake up, or particularly our legislature would wake up and just go ahead and do it. That's what we need to do.
Sounds good. Tracy Curtis wanted to know, how do those people in jail get their absentee ballots?
So if you're a convicted felon, you don't get a ballot at all. So let's remember that. By the way, before you ask, yes, I support restoring the rights of felons who serve their time. That's silly. We should have done it long ago. If you're in jail awaiting trial, but you're not convicted, you should probably talk to the jail personnel and say, hey, I'd like to vote. They'll need to have the jail personnel either allow them or on their behalf call my office, just as if someone who doesn't have access to a computer, same exact sequence. We will fill it in for them. We will use the jail address as where the ballot will go. We'll send it to them there and off you go.
Great, good. Someone said that they're interested in being an election officer. Would I be able to go along during primary so as to learn in advance?
Nope. Only election officers and voters are allowed in the voting location, so we can't do that. There's a special circumstance called, oh gosh, there it goes. it's like observer, but that's not challengers. It's a very special legal circumstance that you could do, but really, realistically, you can't just go and watch. I would say if you want to learn, just do it when you vote. Kind of watch what's going on, pay attention to what the officers are doing. That'll give you at least a little taste while you're walking through.
Right. And Cindy wanted to know how people who are homeless can vote.
That's a great question, and that's an ongoing challenge. We have done various things where we do things like allow them to use the county clerk's office address as their home address. We've also, of course, you can use the Salvation Army or wherever you might be staying if you're having a temporary stay at the Salvation Army or somewhere like that. But they're very difficult to get ballots to for all these reasons. Typically, they don't have IDs. They probably don't even have access to information as to where polling is and where it's going to occur. It's a very difficult problem that I don't have a solid answer to.
Right. All right, this is just double checking. Early voting is 8:30 to 4:30, and election day is 6 to 6. Is that correct?
Very good. Yep.
Okay, that was Tracy Curtis. Good. All right. Do we have some more questions for Dawn?
This is Tracy. Can I ask it out loud or do I need to type it?
Yeah, go ahead, Tracy.
Okay. Just wanted to double. So for the early absentee voting, you need to request it by midnight on May 3rd, but you can turn it in before 6.
So let's be careful and be very careful with our language. For mail-in absentee, excused mail-in absentee, you must request your ballot by May the 3rd, and you must fill it out and complete it and deliver it to us no later than 6 p.m. on election day, including the Dropbox. You could walk up at 5:59 on election day and plop it in the Dropbox and you'd be fine. If you're going to mail it, however, you probably want to get it in the mail at least 5 days in advance of the election.
Thank you.
By the way, if you all recall back in 2020, I think it was 2020, this turkey de joy at the U.S. Postal Service, they closed some of the processing in Lexington. And I'm sure you all noticed it too. The mail went from about 2 days in Lexington to as much as 5, because all of our stuff's now going to Louisville and they don't locally process anymore. That was not good. So I can understand people that are a little nervous about mailing their ballot. If you are, what would be best is to get it back. Go ahead and request it now and get it back to us very quick. And then you can watch online in that same portal and you can see when it gets scanned in, it's returned. You'll eventually be able to see when it's processed. We can't start processing them until May the 3rd, so be patient. But the sooner that you do that process, the more likely that the post office is not a factor. If you wait till later, you probably want to think about using the ballot Dropbox just to be on the safe side.
Okay. Cindy said, how about someone who has an emergency illness that occurs after the deadline for requesting an absentee ballot?
I think Cindy's exceeded her limits. That's called a medical emergency ballot. You have to send a representative down to the office with a form, and I can't remember the exact form. You fill out a form, someone comes down, hands in the form, they take the ballot, you authorize them to get your ballot, they bring it back to you, you do your thing, and then they bring it physically back to us. That's how that one works. That's for a situation where it's the last minute. You have a medical emergency, you have to go to the hospital, you've had a heart attack, something like that, and you're hospitalized. You need somebody to basically get you a ballot. That's what that's for.
Good. It looks like Richard Heine has a question. Richard.
Oh no, you're gaming the system.
Don, I went to your website and I was trying to check to see whether or not I was registered. And I went and clicked on the registration. You have like 4 different things, and one of them is registration. And it let me go ahead and answer all the questions and turn it in.
Oh no, you don't want to do that.
Well, yeah, but I did it because I didn't know what else to do. And
well, it won't hurt for this cycle because the books are closed. So all you're going to do is, I assume, re-register as the same person, same address, same party, and we will process that after the books reopen after May 17th. Where you want it to go on that website is my registration information / sample ballot. And you can still do that, all of you can, and you'll be able to see all the things that I described earlier. It's actually a really nice system.
Sounds good.
I did go to Go Vote Kentucky and then I found it there. I guess obviously I just went to the wrong place.
Well, I'm looking right now, we have a register to vote or update registration. And it should send you.
That's the one I clicked on and it let me re-register.
Let me see where it goes. Yeah, that's the same as Go Vote KY. It just has a different looking URL, but trust me, it's Go Vote KY.
Okay. Someone asked about this recording. It will be posted on our website and also on Outreach Circle, which makes it easy to share with your contacts with email or text. So that is in the chat. Any other questions for Dawn?
Could I just chime in on the hospitalization need for a ballot? Can you hear me?
Certainly.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, here's what my experience was when my husband was in the hospital during unplanned surgery. We were able to get the ballot okay, and we were able to take it back okay, but we had to have it certified, had to have a witness. And we couldn't find a person. We had a hard time finding somebody who would come to the hospital and witness the signature and taking it. We finally did. We had to pay him $30 to do that, but there was nobody in the hospital that would serve that purpose for anything other than a hospital.
Oh, that's a shame.
I know.
So was your husband unable to sign it himself? And he was just doing a mark?
No, he was able to sign it, but
If he's able to sign, I don't remember that form requiring witnesses. You could be right. I don't do this. I don't look at that form every day.
well,
But usually it's kind of like an absentee ballot. And if you're going to make a mark, you know how people that are illiterate make a mark and then you have 2 witnesses? That's typically what that's for. I'm surprised that happened. Also, if you have that situation again, or if you're aware of one, the chaplain would be a good choice to try and get help. I'm sure that person would help sign.
yeah, if he's qualified or she is qualified.
It's not, you just got to stand there and watch.
They wanted an official, what do you call it? What are
Notary.
Notary?
I think what you're talking about is the request must require a notarization. That may be what you're talking about.
Notarization, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be hard.
Right.
So,
There's not much I can do about that. That's the way the law states it.
yeah. So it was first, in order to get the ballot, we had to have it notarized, the request notarized.
Could be. Like I said, I don't know that one off the top of my head.
But now all the requests go through the portal, right? Like,
No, not for medical, I don't think.
oh, not for medical. Okay, sorry.
We're talking about a very specific, yeah. What's wrong with this thing? Well, Jen, I'm having your problem that you had earlier. Go Vote Kentucky's not working.
So I think maybe when you're at work, the govoteky.gov, you have like special access to that, because I also, I asked Leaf about it. He couldn't access it either.
So when we were doing that earlier today, I did it on my phone and it went right through. I just think they must be having issues. Okay, well.
Do we have more questions for Don? He's provided us with lots and lots of information tonight. Thanks so much, Don, for all the information you gave us tonight. I know you've answered many of the questions we had and about how we go about voting this May. Keep in mind, the deadline for requesting a mail-in absentee ballot is in less than 2 weeks on May 3 at 11:59 p.m. and you do need an excuse. Be sure to encourage all your friends, neighbors, and relatives to vote in the primary on May 17th or during one of the early voting opportunities if they are unable to get to the polls on Election Day. A recording of this program will be available next week on the LWV of Lexington website, lwvlexington.com, and or on our outreach circle. And we noticed tonight that there might be a candidate or two in our audience who is running for election in the primary. So if you would like to, you may type your name and the office for which you are running in the chat box. All right. Please join the League this Saturday, April 23rd, 2022, 10 to 12 via Zoom for our annual meeting. During the first hour, we will be approving our program plan, the budget, and electing officers. Then at 11 a.m., we will be joined by our speaker, Fayette County Public School Superintendent, Dr. Liggins, who will tell us about his first year as public school superintendent in Lexington. Coming up in May will be our last community forum of the 2021-22 league year. On Thursday, May 26th, we will learn about Kristallnacht, the World War II event which occurred in 1938, in which Nazi soldiers destroyed Jewish businesses and killed and injured Jewish citizens. Our speaker will be Mr. John Rosenberg of Prestonsburg, who is a survivor of Kristallnacht. You won't want to miss this event. Lastly, be sure to watch the recordings of our 2022 primary election candidate forums available on our website and consult vote411.org, our online voter guide. Thank you for being here tonight. Good night.